I am Madidima Lon Chabeleng, and this is my story. My name is Madidima Lon Chabeleng, and I'm a 37-year-old mother of 4 girls. By day, I put on my honors in accounting to work as the finance director for a fast-paced startup business. If I had to describe my pregnancies and births in one word, it would be traumatic. I've had 4 beautiful, strong daughters, and we all have our health, but we've had some real touch-and-go moments. I would never wish my experience on anyone. I was 24 years old when our firstborn, Dikoti, arrived. Oh, she was so perfect. And as a new mom, I went home to Limpopo to get some one-on-one lessons from my mom. When I was there, I started experiencing some severe back pains. The pains were so bad that my husband rushed me back to Johannesburg, and I was immediately admitted into emergency care for kidney failure. I went from breastfeeding my baby girl to leaving her behind. There's nothing lonelier than that guilt. To this day, I think she might have been the one who saved me, though. Knowing that my little baby needed me and I could not be there for her, gave me that fighting spirit. Over the next few years, we were blessed with 2 more girls, Atlechang and Mahlako. After the incident, I had my first birth. I was worried about my own health, but you always assume that you'll be able to carry them to term. I assumed that I will have natural birth like I did with my first one, but Atlechang had other ideas. She was a breech baby, and that led me to having a C-section to ensure she was delivered safely. The whole time, all that's running through your head is keep my baby safe, keep my baby safe, please God, keep my baby safe. And even when they arrive, well, every parent knows it's what we say to ourselves every day. Matlako was stress-free. I think she knew her sisters needed me and her to just come home healthy. But then in 2017, I fell pregnant with my 4th baby girl, Chloe. And the fear I'd had when I was 24 years old all came crashing back. I had these unexplained fainting spells. My doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and all of my protective instincts were just kicking in. I needed my baby to stay put. It was too early for her to come. And any mother who's carried a child knows that deep fear, because it's so beyond your control. You live on faith and medicine and more faith. It was terrifying. Today, Chloe is 4 years old, and I would do all 4 of my pregnancies all over again. My 4 girls are our world, and we wouldn't imagine life without them. Life and family comes first. We do this thing together, but sometimes it takes a lot of faith and a lot of support and a whole lot of family.
Because your story is our story. We're committed to supporting you with access to the best medical care. Profmed, intelligent medical aid for professionals.
Is a complete health examination, and we mean complete.
I am Dr. Erwin Lingenfelder, and this is my story.
GP, avid adventure biker, passionate about Vespers, father, husband, friend. We are all the sum of our parts, and that includes our tragedies. For Dr. Erwin Lingenfelder, the 5th of October 2020 was just another day, until it wasn't.
It felt as if a giant hand had come up from the earth and grabbed my Vespa. And frankly, that was the last thing I remembered.
I'm very sorry, Mrs. Lingenfelder. Your husband's injuries are extensive. He has suffered a subdural hematoma, a fractured right shoulder, 8 fractured ribs with bleeding in his chest. His right lung is compressed. He has a small tear in his liver. fractured thorax and lower lumbar vertebra, and a bruised kidney and spleen.
Dr. Lingenfelder's injuries were devastating, and when he awoke with memory loss, unable to walk and unsure what the road to recovery looked like, his wife and son were suddenly faced with what it felt like to be on the other end of overwhelming news.
There's a constant soundtrack in ICU, a soundtrack of beeps and blips and glitches. And this soundtrack never stops for 24 hours.
Over the next 5 weeks in hospital and beyond, Dr. Lingenfelder had to learn to remember even the smallest details again. He had to learn to walk on his own and adjust to his recovery. He had to admit he wasn't in full control of his mind or body. It's a terrifying place for anyone to find themselves in. For a doctor who's used to treating patients, it's a long and lonely road. But he wasn't alone. A full team of specialists was with him every step of the way.
I just needed to trust them wholeheartedly. Before this incident, I felt bulletproof. I still want to enjoy life. But life is not just about working. Life is what you can put back in your family. Life is about your community. Life is about the people around you.
Because your story is our story. We're committed to supporting you with access to the best medical care. Profmed, intelligent medical aid for professionals.
The only thing to do at a time like this is to try and weigh everything in a kind of mental scale.
The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus outbreak as a global pandemic.
The means of preventing it, immunization.
Randy was the first child to receive an injection of Salk polio vaccine in the field trials in 1954.
Seeking to pull back the veil from the unknown in order to save more lives.
This is the prescription which common sense and medical science recommend.
To understand how COVID-19 vaccines work, we need to first look at our own immune systems, because vaccines harness what our bodies naturally do to protect ourselves from viruses. When germs, such as the virus that causes COVID-19, invade our bodies, they attack and multiply. We typically call this invasion an infection, which leads to an illness. Think of your immune system as a sophisticated organization made up of different types of white blood cells called macrophages, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. At the front line are our macrophages, white blood cells that swallow up and digest germs, but they leave behind parts of the invading germs called antigens, so that our body can recognize the dangerous germs and create antibodies to attack them. This is done by our B lymphocytes, the white blood cells that attack the pieces of the virus left behind by the macrophages. Defeating a self-multiplying virus takes a few weeks though, and this is the reason why many people will suffer COVID-19 symptoms before the B lymphocytes manage to find and completely eradicate the virus. After COVID-19 is defeated, a few T lymphocytes hang around as guards, ready to jump into action if the body ever encounters COVID-19 again. And this time, the body doesn't need to work out what to do to fight this particular virus, because it already knows. The COVID-19 vaccine is a way to trigger our immune system to get its defenses ready without a single COVID-19 germ ever making it past the gate. It's possible to introduce our immune systems to the protein spikes that encase the COVID-19 germ, because everything is made up of DNA, which can be replicated. The only difference between the vaccines is how they're delivered. Both the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca vaccines are vector vaccines, which use a double strand of DNA, adding the gene for the coronavirus spike protein to another mild virus that typically causes colds or flu-like symptoms. This virus has been modified though, so that it can't replicate inside the human body or cause illness. mRNA vaccines like the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines also deliver the blueprints of the COVID-19 spike protein to our cells, But the delivery method is different. These vaccines use mRNA or messenger RNA, which is basically a template to build proteins. Finally, there's protein subunit vaccines.
Welcome to Profmed Roadshow 2021. Here we are, a year later, when we started this process, looking down the virtual tunnel and saying, was the world ever going to change? Was it ever going to return to a normal? What would new normal look like? And here we are today in the exact same studio where we created our groundbreaking virtual event a year ago. Today, I'm really glad to be joined by you, our members, you, our brokers, and there's a lot of content for us to get through today. We've got stories from real members. We've got top brokers. We have information on what's happening within the business and for the year ahead when it comes to benefits and just general well-being of Profmed. And to start things off today, I'm going to be joined by a woman who has been referred to by Forbes as one of Africa's most powerful women. She's going to talk to us about living in COVID South Africa and the impact of things such as vaccines and what does the future of the vaccine look like in particular. For any of you, before we get into this, if you need to download a presentation, if you'd like to see what else we're talking about, all of the information is going to be available on profmed.coza. Also, feel free to follow us on social media. On this very stream itself, you'll notice there's a comment box. You can comment live and in real time. And at the end of all the proceedings today, I'll have a sit down with Comrie and Hendrik Berg, and we'll talk specifically through some of those Q&As. So without further ado, let's dive straight into Professor Glenda Gray.
Today I'm going to talk to you about chasing a virus and how we've used COVID-19 vaccines to try and control the pandemic that we see escalating in our country. So there have been many strategies designed for COVID vaccine development, and we used platforms that were already known largely to accelerate clinical development. In April 2020, a conceptual framework was developed to accelerate vaccine development. There was an urgent need to make a vaccine. We could not just invest in one single platform in case this vaccine platform failed. We needed to know a lot about the safety of the platforms we were going to use, and we needed to be able to test, evaluate, take these vaccines to scale by manufacturing at a global level in order to develop the program so that the vaccine could be scaled across the globe. And this led to an unprecedented, coordinated approach at a global level to work together to find a vaccine that could work. And if you think back to April 2020, by already November, December last year, we had successful candidates that were already being rolled out in the US. And this was the mRNA platform that we saw being rolled out in the US using both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. So the major goal at the beginning of April 2020 was to look at the various vaccine platforms to make sure that we could use these to rapidly evaluate preclinically in early animal and then early human studies, and then to go into large-scale efficacy studies to get a readout whether these vaccines could work. And we, at a global level, focused on protein vaccines, the RNA and DNA technology that we see in Pfizer, which is an mRNA platform, and Moderna, which is also an mRNA platform. And then we also had a viral vector platform, which looked at the Ad26 vector, which we see in the J&J vaccine, and the chimp ad, which we see in the AstraZeneca. And the Sputnik is a combination of an Ad26 vector and an Ad5 boost, which we will evaluate probably later on in the country and see the safety and efficacy at a global level. But the most important thing that we found in this rapid, accelerated evaluation of vaccines is that the vaccines worked. And this slide just shows you whatever vaccine you look at, we've seen very good vaccine efficacy, which was very good, which means that the immunogens we're using do evoke an immune response that we're trying to elicit and protect against disease and hospitalization. So this has been quite remarkable to have so many large-scale efficacy trials enrolled and completed independently with positive results. And similarly, the data that we see means that the vaccines have done the job against the ancestral strain. But I guess we have to then ask, how does this translate into field effectiveness? So we know the vaccine works in the clinic. What happens if we put it in the field? And what about variants of concern? And what about special populations that we have, HIV-infected individuals and people who are immunosuppressed or who have cancer or are organ transplants? So we have to also look at those special populations. And then the question we know already been asked at this moment in time is, how durable are these vaccines, and do we need to have boosts in the future? So the most important thing to say is, in the field, these vaccines work. So wherever you look at a global level, whether you look in South Africa, you look in the US, you look in the UK, you look in Europe, you look in Chile and in Brazil, we see that these vaccines work in the field. Looking at the UK and Public Health England, after the vaccine was rolled out, you can see the decline in the amount of people dying from COVID-19 from the time the vaccination started. So a nice clear-cut example in old people that vaccines do impact on deaths in England. And then you see here, just looking at Chile, taking another country, a low middle income country setting, and again, you can see unequivocally that this vaccine is causing impact in Chile, and that we do see an impact in people who have been vaccinated. What about variants of concern, and should we be concerned about variants of concern, and will our vaccines that we have work against variants of concerns as they emerge in the countries? So we know that some vaccines have taken a hit with specific variants of concern, and we've seen this in the beta variant. So if you look at Israel, we have seen that there has been an increase in infections in Israel, which coincides with the rise of the Delta variant of concern, and that we see some vaccine effectiveness being reduced. And this has resulted in a third dose of Pfizer being rolled out in Israel. If you have a look at the UK, they also have similarly seen increases in hospitalization, and despite high vaccination rates, and this could be because of the Delta variant, bringing into concern about whether an additional booster is needed in the UK after the primary series. In other parts of the world, there have been third doses given amid concerns over Sinopharm's effectiveness and rising case counts in this area of the world. And so I do think at a global level and in South Africa, we will be having discussions about the timing of boosts of our primary series, the J&J and the Pfizer, to see when we need to do subsequent doses. It's important first and foremost to make sure that everyone in our country gets a primary dose, gets one dose, before we start thinking about allocating additional boosts to other parts, other population groups or other people ahead of people who have not been vaccinated. It's important to address the issues of equity and make sure that we get the vaccine coverage out as much as possible. If you have a look at our own local data, and this is just taking data from the Sosonki study, that was that evaluated the effectiveness of the single-dose J&J jab in healthcare workers, you can see there's been a dramatic reduction in death in people who took this vaccine during the Beta and the Delta wave that we have seen. And then also you can see that with hospitalizations too, that the J&J jab has been effective in healthcare workers and has reduced the risk of hospitalization. On the question on whether South Africans need a boost, it's important to think about making sure that everybody in our country has had at least one dose first before we give a boost. But there may be some people that require a boost, and especially people that are front-facing and who are highly exposed individuals, and in this case it's healthcare workers. And so we will be evaluating whether healthcare workers need a boost towards the end of the year. We're also evaluating what boost we should be giving, and the question is whether they should get an adeno 26 boost, so it's what we would call a homologous boost, adeno 26 prime and adeno 26 boost, or whether we should give a Pfizer or anything else. And so we will be evaluating full dose boosts with half dose boosts, both Pfizer and the J&J, to see whether we can save doses and be able to give more people a boost with less vaccine. And so in the next couple of months, we'll be evaluating the strategy to try and inform policy in the country to see whether what kind of boost we need to give, what is the dose of the boost, and how often we need to give the boost. We would like to get to a situation where we only need to boost people once a year. And so if we are having to boost people every 6 months, it will become problematic and very costly. So the important thing is to evaluate and to try and make sure that we only give a boost once a year, and that would be the aim of our studies in the future. So the last question we're going to talk about is vaccine mandates. And in the country and at a global level, we've been seeing a lot of people talking about vaccine mandates. In fact, in the US, we've seen federal employees, we've seen teachers, and we've seen people who work at schools having to be vaccinated. And the question is whether we should have vaccine mandates in South Africa. Already in South Africa, we're seeing many companies, Discovery for one, that has started to bring in a vaccine mandate, which will begin in January 2022. And we've seen universities to start having these discussions. I've also seen malls in certain parts of the country that have signs that said that only people who've had vaccines may come and shop at the mall. And so I think the discussion around vaccine mandates will become more and more topical as we get to a time where we need to increase the coverage of vaccines in our country. And there are many advantages of vaccine mandates. It does protect the worker, and it does protect the people who are coming to the establishment. And so there may be merit in vaccine mandates. But more important than vaccine mandates is to talk about the trust, the public trust around vaccines. We've seen an increase in the amount of people feeling that these vaccines are experimental, or they're not safe, or they may cause harm. But we know overwhelmingly at a global level that billions of people have got the vaccine, and largely they have impacted on death and hospitalization, and that the safety profile is in favor of the vaccine, in that the risk-benefit ratio definitely favors vaccine usage rather than not being vaccinated. We know that people who do get naturally infected with COVID may have a torrid course of infection, may land up in hospital and may die. And if vaccines can prevent this, it's very important. Next year, we'll also start to have the discussion around vaccinating school children and children over 12. Already in South Africa, there are studies that are investigating vaccines in children, and already in South Africa, the Pfizer vaccine has been approved for children over 12 years of age. And so it'd be very important to start to have discussions about childhood vaccinations. At a global level and in South Africa, we have been devastated by COVID-19, but we're beginning to see that we can turn the corner and that we can get our lives back and we can get our economy back on track. And one way to do this is to make sure that we do get vaccinated and we do try and minimize community transmission and transmission from one person to another. So I do see light at the end of the tunnel. I see 2022 being much better than 2021, and I see us as South Africans starting to take charge and control of this pandemic and turning the corner so that we can keep our schools open, keep our jobs going, and keep our economy going. And so I think that it's very exciting to look forward to 2022 when we will have more and more people in our country vaccinated and start to see the impact of this vaccination program on every facet of society.
Today, we write the world of tomorrow. Leveraging 60 years of experience while spearheading the new. A delicate dance of wisdom and foresight, we are paving and pioneering the road that lies ahead. Sharing a vision, an entrepreneurial spirit, and solutionist way of life. Our purpose is defined in the professionals we serve an intelligent partner when you need us most. Investing time to design, build, and create value. We meet at the intersection of innovation and science, creativity and analytics. Together, we are that collective of professionals who dream, who challenge the norms and achieve the extraordinary. So let's keep leading the way, expanding our journey, lighting the path, with the peace of mind that your well-being is covered by a professional just like you, who shares your values, your investment, and your commitment to deliver every day with tomorrow imagined. We are Profmed, intelligent medical aid for professionals.
Thank you so much, Prof. Gray. It's great to hear you being so bullish about 2022 and beyond. And I think that's what excites me the most. And from a selfish perspective, who can't wait to travel? If we look at ways in which we go into the new year, I think that's what a majority of our members and the brokers on the video today are out there wanting to do. We want to see the world again. And I think those are the opportunities that I personally am the most excited about. Currently, we have a poll on the YouTube stream, so you can participate and you can get involved. 85% of you said that you're partially or fully vaxxed already. And the numbers coming through from the Profmed base in particular indicate that there's also bullishness when it comes to getting vaxxed. There's 32,000 odd members who have gone through the process and at least started it partially or have completed a full vaccination. And I'm not going to give any spoiler alerts because Craig himself has some really interesting stats about what he's seeing out of the member base. So without further ado, let's hand over to Chief Principal Officer and CEO, Craig Comrie.
It's amazing to be with you again after a year of torrid experiences with COVID, I think plaguing many of our homes, our families and friends. Just listening to what Prof. Glenda Gray has to say is really some wisdom we can all use. There is assurance that things are getting better, and we've seen that even in our experience at Profmed, and that's what I want to share with you today. I'm going to reflect a little bit about what the country's experienced first, and then specifically into how COVID has affected our members, the financial outcomes, the implications that impact how we actually plan for the next few years at Profmed. And I can assure you that the Board of Trustees and the people working behind the scenes are there to take care of you, to look after you, and really stand next to you as we go through the coming few months. The first slide that I'm sharing with you here is in fact just the national COVID experience, and you'll see very clearly the three waves since the start of the pandemic last year. So it starts off in 2020, and that first wave effectively hitting us in April. The white part of the graph is the national average. The other colors that are indicated are the various provinces. And maybe if we reflect on the third wave, one of the things we pick up very quickly is the fact that Gauteng almost leads the pack in terms of the COVID experience, while we see some of the outlying provinces actually experience their waves a little bit later. And so as we see the national experience actually transform or come about, we then actually get to the Profmed experience, and you can see almost exactly the same things. What we have, and the most important point of this slide, is in fact, again, the white line indicates the waves and the experiences within the Profmed membership base. So that's almost 76,000 beneficiaries, or as I like to term it, belly buttons that we look after. You will see, in fact, the third wave experienced since June and almost till the middle of July is where the third wave effectively starts to decline for Profmed. We actually see the wave extending a little wider. And that's actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing. The second wave has a very distinctive peak on it. which was driven by mostly the Delta variant that we experienced. So the reason for the flattening of the curve is exactly the strategy that we've heard from all those healthcare experts over time. We actually see the impact, or we're starting to see the impact of the vaccines. And that's critical for us. If we are to protect ourselves, our families, and the people around us, it is essential that we get involved and take those vaccines. And so we see some of the third wave in the Profmed context being a little less than the second wave. And so you'll see in the national averages, the third wave is in fact higher than the second wave, not for Profmed, and that's thanks to members going for their vaccines. So I want to chat a little bit about the financial impacts. And so the COVID experience financially has changed since the first year. So in 2020, and this graph basically is the amount of claims that we pay on a daily basis, plotted over time from the period April 2020 all the way through to almost the end of July in this year. And so what we have seen in the first part of the graph, or the first year in 2020, is that claims just disappeared. People weren't going into hospitals. They weren't going for both elective procedures. Something interesting that we saw, even the emergency procedures declined. And that's due to people not driving as much and certainly not having the risky behavior that sometimes South Africans are very well known for. So we see the actual above the line, which is the orange line, is in fact the COVID claims that we start to pay. Below the line is the traditional claims that we pay on a day-to-day basis. And you'll see that as we go through the experience in 2020, July kicks in with significant costs. In fact, in 2020, we see a number of claims all the way from April to December in the region of 90 million rand is what we paid for COVID-related costs. Now that actually is so much less. It's half of what we've paid for in the 2021 experience. So we've had one wave in 2020. We actually experienced two waves in 2021. In fact, vaccination is the only thing that can save us from a fourth wave, which we anticipate will happen in the period November and December this year. So please get out there and vaccinate. So what you'll see then, if I move to the 2021 year, you'll actually pick up that the white line goes above the horizontal line. And it's the white line that means that we've spent more in terms of COVID claims than we've actually budgeted for, or more in terms of overall claims experience than we actually budgeted for. This is the overall number of claims that we've paid, and so expressed a little bit differently. And if you can see the various blue lines that spike up, those are every single COVID cases that we've actually contributed in terms of whether it be testing or a hospital admission, oxygen at home. We actually measure every single COVID experience. In fact, we've had more than 3,000 of our members infected by COVID. And so what we're doing here, you'll see that slowly you can actually see those lines go up and down. You can very well plot the three waves again. But the overall experience and the overall cost, firstly, the darker green type of color is in fact the hospital costs. So our hospital costs have been immense, specifically in the 2021 year. We do see the pinkish line, which in fact is our testing, the number of tests that we paid for. Our population enjoys tests. In fact, we've encouraged a lot of that, and we've started to actually cover more tests as we've gone through the pandemic. The slight green line at the top is in fact the emergent of the vaccines that we start to pay. So at this point in time, till the end of July, we've only paid for about 8 million vaccines. Probably in the last month, in August and into September, we've paid a similar amount. So we can see the vaccine program really starting to come through in the last month. But the total amount of claims that we've paid then for the last 2 years since the start of the pandemic, sitting on 243 million. We estimate that will go to somewhere close to 270 million rand, if not 300 million rand, and it really depends on what that fourth wave looks like. So the impact is significant. If we look at the individual options within Profmed, we actually seen a different impact. We expected the membership on the higher options, which tend to be our older members and also tend to actually have more chronic conditions and comorbidities, so they should have been affected worse by the COVID experience. In fact, our upper options have experienced less COVID-related claims than those on the bottom options, which are our proactive and proactive plus options. And so you'll see very clearly out of our pro-pinnacle option, which is our top option, of all the claims that we paid, so it's the aggregate of COVID and non-COVID related claims, 7.7% were COVID related. I mean, that number for our proactive option on the bottom end, where we have almost a 10-year differential in our age group, is 12.1%. So we actually seen a lot more people being infected even on our lower options. I mean, we are always happy to say from a Profmed perspective, if you need the help, we're always there, we'll cover it. And the same counts for the COVID experience. We've covered significant amount of our claims. So just a word on vaccines, and I've shared on a personal capacity with friends and everybody I know some of the Profmed stats, which are so convincing in terms of why you should take a vaccine. And so let me quickly allude to that. So we've had, since the start of the pandemic until now, 3,000 admissions to hospital with people that have COVID. Of those 3,000, around 400 have been submitted to ICU on ventilation. In fact, many of our patients have multiple ventilations in terms of keeping them alive. Of those 400, we haven't had any that were fully vaccinated. And I don't have to argue the stat and talk about whether the vaccine should be compulsory or mandatory. In fact, what I'm saying is we'll give you the information. You need to look at it carefully. The information can be audited, but you make up your decision on what you want to do going forward. And so we see since the start of the year up until now, in fact, the graph shows just over 20,000 of our members have received the COVID-19 vaccine. We see that growing every week, and around 1,000 to 2,000 beneficiaries are still accessing that vaccine. So again, we split it up, and what we are doing is we're tracking the effectiveness of the vaccine. So even amongst our members, we can tell whether they've gone for the Pfizer vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccines are tracked. But what we want to do for all our members is encourage you to register. It's becoming far easier. There's almost no queues at the places where you can access the vaccine. The vaccine is going to save your life and save the life of your loved ones.
I was about to be a mother for the second time, but I could never have imagined what was to come.
I will never forget the news. My grandson was healthy, but you had an allergic reaction to the epidural.
I couldn't hold or nurse my baby, and they said I'd probably never walk again.
Profmed stood by us each step of the way. We could focus on our family and Sandra's health because they worried about the rest.
Mom, you taught me strength and worth. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that it will be filled with love.
Because your story is our story. We're committed to supporting you with access to the best medical care. Profmed, intelligent medical aid for professionals.
There's quite a few things to unpack after Craig's commentary. Thank you very much, Craig Comrie. And what's interesting is that on our poll, if you look at your stream on YouTube, you'll be able to see that there's a comment section, there's a poll section. We'll be putting out a whole bunch of interesting questions throughout the day. And I think that the one insight that's just come through is that so many of you on the stream today, so many of you brokers are saying that your members are 79% more likely to actually want to invest in a medical aid premium every month since COVID-19 entered the world. And I think that just shows you that there's obviously a lot more conversation around the space that we're in. There's a lot easier to be able to start those conversations. And I think the conversation starters are only amplified by our real testimonials. And you saw there a brief little clip about Sandra's story. Sandra is a real Profmed member, and she's included in the latest TV commercial that's going to be coming out on DSTV in October. Coupled with that, there's actually also going to be a full documentary around her story. As you saw there, Sandra was allergic to her epidural with her second child, and it changed her life forever. And such an amazing, inspiring human being. I had the privilege of being able to sit down with her last week and actually chat to her about why she chose Profmed, how the brand has been the ultimate representation and the epitome of a human brand for her in her situation. So let's go and see what happened when I caught up with Sandra. Welcome to this special edition Profmed Vodcast series with Sandra Razive, real-life Profmed member who has an incredible story. She happens to be a Profmed member, and today we're going to talk about exactly how the brand has impacted her life. She's the star of the upcoming documentary series as well as the TV commercial retelling her story. And today, Sandra, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I was about to be a mother for the second time, but I could never have imagined what was to come.
I will never forget the news. My grandson was healthy, but you had an allergic reaction to the epidural.
I couldn't hold or nurse my baby, and they said I'd probably never walk again.
Profmed stood by us each step of the way. We could focus on our family and Sandra's health because they worried about the rest.
Mom, you taught me strength and worth. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that it will be filled with love.
Because your story is our story. We're committed to supporting you with access to the best medical care. Profmed, intelligent medical aid for professionals.
Let's start with the basics. How long have you been a Profmed member for?
So I've been a Profmed member since 2016, and I joined around August of 2016.
So it's just over 5 years now, and you've had a couple of pregnancies. And how has that experience been being with the brand?
So I must say that honestly, I have really enjoyed my pregnancies. During the time I was pregnant and being covered by Profmed, that really put my mind at ease, because I always wanted to make sure that when I give birth in the safest possible manner, and I get the best health care for my sake as well as for the sake of my children.
And why did you choose Profmed? What was it about the brand that made you say, these are the people that I want to look after me and to cover me?
All right, so I'm just going to tell you a bit of a story regarding that. So it all started in 2014 when I was in my final year studying pharmacy at the University of Western Cape, whereby there was a team of people that came from, Profmed, PPS. They spoke about Profmed. That was the first time I heard about Profmed. And then I was really intrigued. And then in 2015, when I was doing my internship, I got the opportunity to help people in the pharmacies, working through. And then it was really interesting how Profmed, would really treat and give best service for their patients, in terms of when you claim, they would get, their medication on time and everything. So I was really interested in knowing more about Profmed. In 2016, I got also married end of 2015, and I really wanted to start, my family being covered, knowing that even when I fall pregnant and have kids, they will always be covered and have, secure healthcare, knowing how expensive healthcare is in South Africa. So what I did is I went through a journey to check through all the quotations and the benefits, right, of different medical aids, and I really liked Profmed because of their hospital plan, because that was something that I was eyeing on because of knowing that, you know, being a female child and being a female professional, I would be expecting to have kids, and I just wanted a good hospital plan, because hospital bills can be daunting and, you know, can leave you really in huge debt. So when I came across what Profmed was offering me, I really liked it, and I was not too keen. For me, my choice was Proactive Plus, because I wasn't really a sickly person. I could spend a whole year, if not two, without really consulting. So for me, the hospital plan was the perfect choice.
I don't want to give away too much of the story, because I think there's an incredible documentary that's coming out shortly about your story. But I think that it was one of those 1 in a million, 1 in a few 100,000, where you were actually allergic to your epidural in your most recent pregnancy. And that's terrifying. And you're still going through a lot of treatment to right the wrongs and the impact of that. But I'm interested to learn more about how that experience has been. Obviously it's been terrifying and it's been really difficult, but you still have this amazing smile on your face through all of this.
So I never thought this could happen to me, given the fact that I'm also still young, and I had a first child and I never had any complication, and I just felt that with my history I would never have any medical complication. It's something that we don't hear often. So, and having Profmed walking or holding my hand through the processes made it so much easier for me to recover and focus more on my road to healing, because the medical bills were taken care of. It's quite expensive. It's very expensive, if I must say, you know, to be admitted in a hospital, in a good private hospital, to give birth. And in my case, you know, with the extended stay in the hospital, I thought I was going to have a huge co-payment. And that was also part of the things that I was really scared. I was really scared of, as a mother of 2 now, having an additional kid and having all these bills on my neck. I didn't know how I would cope with the therapies that I needed to now, you know, venture into in order for me to become better. However, you know, Profmed guided me through every step and gave me the opportunity to be able to heal in a better way, access to specialists that, you know, helped me to route my treatment in the best way possible. I got access to physiotherapists, which I never visited before in my life. It was my first time. I never thought I would ever need a physiotherapist until I'm a couple of decades older, at least. And I'm really grateful that they really helped me to set my mind at ease.
Yeah, I think it's quite special, because, you know, so many brands out there talk about being human, understanding their customers better, wanting to make your life easier. But it's only when you're in a situation like this that people show their true colors as a business. And so many stories that I've heard about Profmed's approach to customers is how they treat you like a human. The case managers are proactive. They spend the time getting to know that you're okay and checking in. And it sounds like that's been your experience.
Yes. So I had a case manager, Nicole, and you know, actually I didn't know that, you know, she knew about me, you know, personally. She called me and addressed me as Sandra, and I just thought I'm just a number like any other person. And she was aware of what I was going through. She spoke about my condition and how, you know, she was going to help me through Profmed, you know, to access, you know, all the healthcare that I needed, and how, you know, all the claims that came through, how they were taking care of them. And really, that was really special for me. That was really special, because I felt that more than just a medical aid, I have like a family that really cares, that really follows up on me on what's really happening. I remember when I needed a wheelchair and I needed to get out of rehab, she literally called me and she's like, I'm gonna sort it out. I'm gonna sort it out. Give me a couple of hours to make sure that we get the wheelchair, you know, paid in, because the providers wanted the payment before they could give me the wheelchair. So really, I am grateful for the service that Profmed offered me.
What I think is amazing is I think you have an incredible mental strength, because some doctors said that they expected you may never walk again, and here you are. I mean, you were using crutches and you've got out of that wheelchair and you've said, listen, I'm gonna just put my head down and go through all these therapies. So how often a week are you going through therapies? Is there occupational therapy and physio? Like, how is your life structured now?
Okay, so since after rehab, right, when I was fully admitted into rehab, I now go for therapy twice a week. I go on Mondays for 1 hour for a locomote session, and then I also go on Thursdays to the actual rehab, where I also spend an hour with the physiotherapist teaching me how to, how to walk, how to strengthen my muscles, and how to get back, into the routine. And on a daily basis, I also do my exercise at least minimum of 30 minutes to 1 hour, whereby I also perform some of the tasks that I learned during the physio sessions to be able to keep up the momentum and maintain, to maintain and build up the strength that I have.
It's amazing. And tell me, you're in this story now, you're in this Profmed TV commercial. So I want to know, what kind of message would you like to leave with the viewers out there? Or, if it's another version of Sandra, like what would you like to tell people that they need to most consider when it comes to a medical aid or a provider, and some of the learnings that you've had in this really crazy journey?
All right. So I would like to say, honestly, medical aid is a must to have. It's a definite need, it's not a want, because some of these bills that you really face, you can never be able to provide, or you can never be able to clear them up using your own personal funds, right? And looking for a medical aid, you need to be considerate of the benefits that you get. You need to really sit down, make sure that you take your time to reach out, ask for a quotation, ask for the benefits, looking at also your needs in life and the time and the frame where you are. Just, think about also the service that, that service provider claims to give you, and read upon reviews, look around, people who have used the medical aid and hear firsthand information. And I would say that I had a great time, and I'm still having a good time, and, working with Profmed and them taking care of my bills, because they still pay up for my therapies up to this day, and I'm grateful for that.
Sandra, you're an absolute inspiration, and you made me appreciate just a little bit of this time that we've been able to sit together, and the fact that you just continue to have this positive outlook, and all we can do is wish you the best on the rest of your recovery. And I can't wait to start seeing you shred those crutches, and who knows, maybe there's a half marathon or even a comrades in your future, eh?
Yes, I can.
Sandra, thank you so much. It's really been lovely having you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, absolute goosebumps and chill moments spending time with Sandra. Just an incredible human being, and just a real testament to the humanity of the Profmed brand and what it does for its members on a daily basis, even in those most freak of situations. Greetings to all of those of you who have joined this stream in between these segments. I hear we're reaching close to 650 of you tuning in, so that's a record up last year. So now we really are into the virtual world. We're well and truly entrenched. And up next, I think it's a perfect opportunity to take someone's story such as Sandra's and move on into benefits. And that's exactly what Hendrik van den Berg is going to take us through on the next section with his presentation, as he's the GM of new business, and he's going to give you all the ins and outs of what you can expect during 2022. And then we'll go from that into Craig Comrie's second part of his presentation until you see me again.
Hello, everybody. And thanks for joining us again today. Thanks for spending your time with us. We know it is very precious, especially this time of the year. So we will endeavor to make good use of it and add some value. It is my pleasant responsibility to take you through our 2022 benefit enhancements. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is our annual overall day-to-day limits on our Proactive Plus, increased by 500 Rand. On the screen you will see the numbers reflecting total benefit. Further benefit limit increases. Our Profmed tariff, the scheme's base tariff, calculated at the 2021 Profmed tariff plus a 3% increase. We have increased our GP rate to 519 Rand and our specialist increase to 780 Rand. Okay, continuing with our benefit enhancements. COVID-19 vaccine. Beneficiaries 18 years and older be subject to use of vaccination sites as accredited by the Department of Health, subject to prescribed minimum benefit legislation. Vaccine only, 100% of cost as determined by the Department of Health. Single exit price, obviously one vaccine per beneficiary, and there will be a fee to administer the vaccine, again paid at 100% of cost as determined by the Department of Health. International travel medical assistance, specifically relating to COVID-19. With the rollout of the vaccine, Profmed will be covering members traveling abroad should they contract the virus. This is effective for travel dates departing from South Africa on or after the 1st of January 2022, or when submitting your claim, or if you're going to be claiming retrospectively. COVID-19 vaccines and testing will not be covered outside the borders of South Africa. Okay, something we are extremely excited to present is our Tums to Tots programs, as well as our Whisper program. And I'm going to hand over to Decent and ask her to take you through both of these programs.
Hi everyone, my name is Decent Nyoni and I represent Profmed for marketing. I'm here to introduce our new benefit. It's called Tums to Tots and it's powered by Baby Yum Yum. Here's a short clip for more information. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Sia and this is my wife and Paul. We've just had our first baby and Profmed has really given us the support we needed.
As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I joined the Profmed Tums to Tots program and immediately started receiving amazing SMSs and content related to my baby's developmental stages. I was also able to join a personalized portal with loads of information, all designed around my journey and what to expect. All this information constantly changed and was available even when our baby was a toddler. What I really loved was that based on my plan, I was given additional options of benefits so that I could choose what I really wanted. For example, I was able to choose a super designer mummy swag bag filled with feel-good essentials to support mum on her metamorphosis from a woman to a mum.
Some of the other items that Paul was able to choose from included baby gift hampers, the feel-good option to donate to a charity, and even books. It was a huge relief not to have to worry about dinner that first day home, as Profmed had organized meal vouchers as one of our options, so instead, we could focus on just being at home with our newborn.
Being new parents is terrifying. I was so stressed about the 6-week vaccination. Thankfully, Profmed Tums to Tots program provided us with our very own support nurse who came to our home to do our well baby visit. She also gave me all the lactation and feeding advice I needed as well, all in the comfort of our home.
Our nurse also took the time to counsel Paul about the baby blues and postpartum care. She even told me the signs to look out for if either of us were struggling to cope.
We never felt alone. As one of my choices, I was even able to join the Baby Yum Yum Momcierge Club. I received discount vouchers, access to parent support groups, reduced fees to exercise and stimulation groups, online videos, invitations to exclusive parenting and family events, and more.
Profmed put our family first, and they will do the same for yours with the Tums to Tots program.
Another one of our benefit enhancements this year is our Whisper Gender-Based Violence program. South Africa has seen a rise in gender-based violence, more so during the lockdown period. And so we as Profmed responded to that with our gender-based violence program. It gives our members access to face-to-face consultations, telephonic consultations, and even legal support to help you through a situation that you may be going through. For more information, log on to our website for contact details.
Thank you very much, Decent. Hey guys, those of you who attended our gig last year will remember I issued a Watch This Space alert. I was specifically talking about the savings account space, and I promised you that we were working alongside our very, very good friends at PPS on something fresh and innovative and intelligent. And it is with pride today that I talk about and present to you the PPS wallet. This video is going to tell you a little bit about the mechanics and how it works.
PPS Wallet is a savings account available to all Profmed Medical Scheme members across all benefit options. Unlike a traditional medical savings account, which doesn't give you the flexibility to choose how much you want to save each month, you control your monthly debit order amount starting from 300 Rand. Plus, you can use your available balance for any health-related claims not covered by Profmed. PPS Wallet is an independent savings account that is separate from your medical aid benefits and contributions. You simply choose an amount starting from 300 Rand, your account is debited, and your savings start to grow. You can use your savings for additional day-to-day healthcare expenses such as co-payments and over-the-counter medicines. Or you can use your savings for future planned medical expenses not covered by your medical scheme benefits. There are no transaction fees. The payment of claims is seamless, and pharmacy claims are processed in real time based on available funds in your savings account.
Okay guys, so the positioning of this is important. I'd like to create some context. And you will recognize this signal slide. We've been working on this using the information that the actuaries have been providing us, and we've been showing this to you going back to 2013. And after me, Craig will be explaining the mathematics behind the information in the slide in further detail. What I'd like to just focus on is the vertical line represents contribution increases, so the higher the dot sits on the matrix, the more expensive it is. And the horizontal line represents benefit richness, so the further to the right the dot sits, the richer the specific benefits. So all the dots you're looking at represent options in the open market space, and the big blue dots represent the Profmed options. Now, one of the issues that has become part of the national narrative, if you will, not just at Profmed, is affordability. And we have taken that very, very seriously. And as you know, we have been talking about moving one of our options into this specific space because obviously we are not there and we are not competitive in that space. However, it's not as simple as that because, as you well know, every time you add a benefit or you increase a tariff, the contributions go up. So we believe that we've settled on an intelligent and real solution with a myriad of applications as we go forward and develop forward. So we are talking about that specific option, which is the Proactive Plus, and here we're talking about the ProSecure and ProSecure Plus options. And the challenge we have, our statistics show us that we have many members and members with families that are sitting on the proactive options that shouldn't actually be there. They should actually be on an option with richer benefits or even the ProSecure option. However, the jump in contribution, the cost is just simply unattainable. It's just too far for them. So hence our thinking in terms of how we can go about in addressing the solution, but in a real way. So, as I said, with our partners and friends at PPS, we've come up with a real solution. And this product effectively enables our members to construct their own Profmed option. Okay? So, for example, if you take the proactive option and you add the PPS wallet, you can add 300 Rand a month minimum into the wallet with increments of 100 Rand. And if you do that over 12 months, you effectively have created a day-to-day or out-of-hospital benefit of 3,600 Rand. If you are able to deposit 500 Rand a month into the wallet, effectively you are creating 6,000 Rand out-of-hospital benefits per annum. And similarly, 800 Rand per month gives you 9,600 day-to-day or out-of-hospital benefits. But it doesn't stop there, guys. We are constantly searching for intelligent solutions, and the wallet is available to all members across all our options. Members, as I've already said, can choose an amount from 300 Rand per month with 100 Rand increments. You can, by making use of this wallet, save and pay for additional day-to-day healthcare expenses, but also you can save for any future planned medical expenses that your option obviously does not cover. And payments from our side between Profmed and our administrator and the service provider will be 100% seamless. You will just receive notification by SMS or whatever the case might be that we have paid this portion of an account, and it has been paid out of your PPS wallets. And then lastly, we envisage many more smart applications. Just as an example, 3 years from now, you may have enough in there to say, well, I'd like to move a portion of that into my funding account, my retirement funding account. Or maybe you need to save up for something expensive, healthcare related always, guys. You cannot pay your golf membership fees, unfortunately. And similarly, you can, at one point, we are working towards a point where you can tell us what you would like us to pay out of this wallet and whatnot. But also, the alternative is that you could, at one point, start funding your medical aid contributions out of your PPS wallet, should you get there. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to hand you back to Craig.
It's always good to follow Hendrik. He's got amazing headwear, and we've asked the studio light to be dimmed for his part of the presentation. At least for mine, we can switch up the lights. I want to talk about the celebration that we've been having at Profmed for some time. We've seen membership growth be an immense positive outcome for Profmed. Now, many people might compare our options, what we do, and how we do it with those in the rest of the market. In fact, we've seen consistent membership growth for the last 10 years. And our net growth, even for this year, is set to be just under the 2%. And so you'll see in this graph the last few years' successes. And so we continue to celebrate, and much of that's due to you as brokers, also Hendrik's team, the new business team, that we celebrate all these successes. It really is an important and fundamental part of our business. It provides an opportunity for us to attract younger members into our scheme. Those younger members effectively cross-subsidize the older members already in our scheme. And our longevity rates, our retention rates have all improved over the last few years as well. So this is a competitive analysis of how membership growth has gone over the last few years per competitive scheme. So we actually indicate the Profmed in the blue color right on the right-hand side, and we plot each of those years' growth. So it's a percentage of net growth that we're showing you here. So next to Profmed, we have BestMed in orange, Discovery in green, FedHealth in the yellow, MediHelp, MedShield, and Momentum. And those tend to be our more dominant competitors in our space. And so what we are just showing, demonstrating is, if you look at all the competitors, we're the only one that even through the COVID pandemic has been able to grow our business. And that's an amazing achievement for the team. So I want to also share with you, you've heard about the COVID experience and the claims experience, but I thought I'd share with you just a little bit of how schemes work and how claims affect how we project the sustainability of the scheme in the long term. So this is a graph, and it really is just illustrative. If you had to start on 100, let's call year 0 100, your claims, if you pay 100 rands worth of claims in year 0, we see that in year 1, people talk about just normal inflation. In healthcare, we talk about healthcare inflation, and specifically healthcare inflation related to medical schemes. What we see is that year on year, and this is the experience across many schemes in the industry, if not all schemes in the industry, we see some of the increase being an inflation-driven increase, so doctors and specialists and hospitals that are charging an inflationary-based increase, let's say of 5%. But over and above that, we see new technology enter the market. In fact, there's been a huge amount of work done on things like biologicals for cancer. I mean, these are really highly technology-driven treatment for cancer, and they're exceptionally successful. So we see these new technologies actually enter the market. They come at huge costs. One of the biologics for the cancer treatment is almost R1 million a month. And you can't access that, or many of our options can't access that unless you're on the top option. But it does add to how we experience healthcare inflation. In fact, the other point that we see is we see that where last year in 2020, or even in 2021, people will use the doctor 5 times. We've seen them use the doctor 6 times in 2021 and 2022. And so that drives inflation above our normal salary and wage inflation. We realize that that actually squashes the affordability that people are able to afford medical schemes. And so you'll see as you work through year 1 and year 2, by the time you get to year 3, you're actually paying effectively 27% more than you did in year 1. And so inflation for healthcare and medical schemes always sits at the 9%, between 8 and 10% range in terms of our claims experience. And now showing you that just as a theoretical outcome, I'm going to show you what has happened to Profmed. So this is, again, on the top axis is the actual claims experience per year. And so if you look at the orange color, you'll see that we go back to 2016, where the actual claims experience compared to 2015 increased by 14%. Okay, that's a significant high increase. And so as you plot it through, we come to 2019, that again is almost at 14.5%. So you can understand the pressure when we experience claims that are above 10% or even close to that 10% mark, what happens to the response of our contribution and our premium increases. 2020 absolutely is the total misnomer, and that's due to the COVID experience. We just saw the claims fall out. In fact, during that period, we paid 160 million rand less than we thought. Compared to the prior years, it probably is about 20% less than even a 2019 experience. The important experience for us as we look at 2021 is that we see the actual claims return to very much a normal experience. And so you can see now it's sitting at just under the 10% mark. It does include some of those COVID claims that I spoke of earlier. But we see going forward that it's going to return in 2022 through to 2026 to somewhere between 8 and 10% on average is what healthcare inflation for Profmed is going to look like. So the question is, how do we take that and look at the sustainability of Profmed and consider the contributions while we understand members are struggling in terms of their own affordability levels and the pressure that we've been experiencing in the last few years. This graph is really how we look at our budgeting process, and we've looked at it in terms of the impact of COVID, but also what happens when everything returns to normal. I think normal is something we'd love to see in the future. But effectively, we've got our reserve ratio. Now, our reserves sit just over R1 billion. It sounds like a lot of money, but that R1 billion actually goes very quickly if you consider we're now paying out just over R2 billion in claims a year. So you'll see very healthy sitting in 2021 at 41.2%. And then we have this downward trend all the way to 2025 and 2026, where we have a stabilizing effect coming through in terms of our reserves. Now, it's driven predominantly because of that healthcare inflation that we're seeing. We are seeing in some spaces how members are buying down, but what they do is they take all their claims behavior with them. So they might save 5% of contributions, but their actual claims reduction is not 5%. It might be 1%. So there's not a matching in terms of that experience. The scheme is always going to look at the long-term solutions, and I think there are many medical schemes that are looking at the next year or two and not actually looking further into the future. So we're always going to, as a Profmed principle, look at that long-term sustainability as a principle and a foundation of how we make decisions. So I want to say it is gearing for, and I'm sharing with you some of the real complexities that the board has battled with throughout this year in terms of seeing the COVID experience. Our actuaries have actually found it very difficult to predict the future. And so it's that reason why I thought I'd just share with you the competitive position of where Profmed sits in the market. Now, the slides here have actually been put together by Insight Actuaries. And what they do is they take every open scheme that's in the marketplace. We've designated them a color. You'll see Discovery is a red here, Best Med is a green. And we've plotted every option or plan that you can select into this graph. On the vertical, we actually tell you how much it will cost. And on the most, we're using averages. So we're using an adult principal member, an adult dependent, and a child dependent. And together it formulates what your contribution level is, so on the vertical axes. On the horizontal axes, what we've done, and it is very difficult to do, is we've compared what they offer. So what is in their benefit structure? What do they cover in hospital? What do they give you, a savings account or a day-to-day limit? How does that work? And so we've plotted every single option in the market on these two axes. And so the principle being that as you move from left to right, you get more comprehensive options, better cover. As you go up the vertical, you actually are paying more in terms of the benefit that you have. And so naturally, as people select, you can see what is called the value line. So it moves almost in that type of a direction. The Profmed options are in the big blue. So we've actually just increased them. The big blue bubbles are the Profmed options. So sitting right in the middle of everything. So this is actual fact the 2018 slide. And so we've plotted it for some time just to give you a view of how our options compete. 2019, you'll actually see the introduction of our Savvy options. So they become exceptionally affordable. In fact, on the ProSecure or even the Proactive options, it's the most affordable in the marketplace if you choose ProSecure Savvy or Proactive Savvy options. The option on just to the right of those first set of blue bubbles is in fact the Proactive Plus option. And that option we've positioned in a space where many of the other schemes are actually competing. So that's 2019. We'll give you a view of 2020. You can see exactly the same effect. And then we've got a 2021 slide. So still maintaining significant competitive positioning in the market and in amongst the rest of the open scheme market. So you can look at that in detail a little bit later. What we have done for our Proactive Plus option is we've consistently moved it and provided more day-to-day benefits this year, and Hendrik also spoke a little bit about that earlier. So if we actually drill down into the individual options, you'll see how the competitiveness is actually emphasized when we look at, for instance, the bottom options, which are the Proactive and Proactive Plus plans, along with the Savvy option. So again, the blue being Profmed and the other schemes in the other colors as mentioned. You'll see that even on the Proactive Savvy option, which is the bottom light blue line, it's designed specifically around looking after graduates and those that are starting within their professions, probably don't have a stable income as yet, but that is as low as 715 Rand for the 2021 year, and it goes up to 775 Rand. It's still the best in the market, and you won't find better value. It's there to encourage those young members to join the scheme. And as their income builds, obviously, they will look at the ProSecure options and the other options. But what I've done is I've looked at these options. I've looked at some of the surrounding competing options, and I want to just draw your attention to a few things. One of the things often people mistake is the fact that on our proactive plans and our proactive plus plans that are highly competitive when you look at the, let's just look at the principal member number, 1,290 Rand compared to its nearest competitor, Bonitas Bond Start, which is 1,452 Rand. The difference often lies in the fact that those other options on this category are hospital network and GP network driven, while our options are actually open. So you can have your own choice of hospital group that you want to attend. In fact, if you had to look at a similar option, you'd look at those savvy options. And those savvy options then are around 8 to 10% lower in price compared to the options that I've just highlighted here. So it's really important that people look at the options quite carefully. We've done it in terms of the total actuarial analysis, and the value is unmistakable. This is the ProSecure and the ProSecure Plus options, along with their savvies again in the lighter blue. And again, you can see the ProSecure, the main options are in that competitive value line, but the savvy options are, again, there's no competitor for these two on the bottom there. So real value as you compare the options through to the marketplace. And again, I've done very much the same. You can look at the competing Bonitas, typically in that ProSecure space. If you're looking for a little bit more in terms of hospital cover and day-to-day cover, you'll look at that ProSecure Plus, and you'll see from 4,000 where ProSecure Plus is, Discovery Classic Saver with a day-to-day is slightly cheaper, but has a significant amount of co-payments attached to that. You must look at those co-payments. And the MedShield one sitting on 6,100 Rand. So look at the options carefully. We understand it's difficult. That's why we encourage members to speak to us or speak to their broker so that you know and you are informed about what you're choosing. The Pro-Pinnacle option remains a very comprehensive option, and you can see amongst the competitors is in a good space as well. I want to then just touch on what you've all been waiting for. It really is the contribution increases for next year. And we are going to do things a little bit differently this year. I think if anything, COVID's taught us to be a bit more flexible in our approach. We need to actually think of how we can change up how we traditionally have done things. We've certainly learned to adopt things a little quicker and a little differently. So the baseline for this slide is, in fact, every of those schemes we've plotted over the last few years. So since 2017, we've looked at their contribution increases per year, and you can actually look at it all the way through. So the top green line, for instance, is MedShield. In fact, if you are on MedShield today, in 2021, you would be paying about 165% more than you paid than in 2016. So that's how some of these lines are working. You'll see Profmed sitting in the middle of the pack. So contribution increases have always been in line with the industry, if not in the bottom half in terms of those increases. So we still remain very competitive in those increases. So this is what I know you've been looking for, and I just want to put this right on the top of it. We've looked at our experience through this year, and we've noted the higher COVID-related claims. We've noted a very real kickback in normal claims experiences as well. If we had to make a decision today, and as we look at the numbers, it's very clear that our contribution rates would in fact be 8.9% on average above for 2022. So all the numbers point towards the 8.9%, and you can see that's a weighted or just an average increase. In fact, the lower plans, because of those COVID claims, are sitting at 9.1%, while the others sit on 8.6%. So those are the increases we actually need for future sustainability and longevity of Profmed. We've also plotted just some Rand values so you understand what the Rand values aren't all that different to the other schemes when you consider some of the increases that we're hearing in the market. So you'll find on proactive, on a premium basis, that on a Rand basis, your premium goes up 162 for a principal member. And so I want to share with you how intense the debate has been on what we can do for members, and we realize that members are experiencing financial constraints. So effectively what we've done is taken that 8.9% increase and we're deferring it to 1 April. So for the period January to March, you actually pay exactly what you pay during 2021. And then from the 1st of April, that increase of 8.9% on average. Effectively, we know it sits on about a 6.68% increase We think that's a reasonable place for us to be to create sustainability going forward. I mean, we have considered a few things, and some of the uncertainties that still exist in the market is the fact that we've got perhaps a fourth wave in this year. We know that traditional pandemics have created other waves as well, so up to 5 or 6 waves of infection is what we anticipate into the future. But as we restore back to our normal claims behavior, we know that that number still sits around 8 and 10%. And so contributions tend to have to mimic your claims behavior. So we think this is the best way we can return almost 49 million rand to our members in the period January to March next year. So effectively over the whole year, it's a 6.68% increase. That does mean that our benefits change from 1 January. Some of the enhancements that we've been speaking of kicks in from 1 January, but the benefit increase or the contribution increases will only kick in from 1 April going forward. I think it's a great result in terms of returning some value back to our members in the first quarter of next year. And I think it'll go a long way in terms of people who are struggling to restore their incomes, employment, etc. And then from 1 April, we see the increases coming through. So we believe those increases will be maximum on average at 8.9%. And we'll be communicating to the membership, to the brokers, to everybody in the market exactly how and when that will take place. So go back to, even with those increases, how do we then feature within the market space? So we've had a number of schemes release what their increases are, and you'll see many that do the deferral route, that change the actual numbers. We've taken some assumptions in terms of the schemes that we still don't understand what their increases might be, and we've created a view from 2016 actuals until 2021, and then projected for 2022. And you'll see on the Proactive and Proactive Plus plans, which are it's a brown line and a yellow line, effectively even on a rand by rand basis or a total contribution basis, we well below the red line, which is a Bonitas, and a Discovery line, which is the brown line at the top. So if you look at the analysis, you'll still find that with an 8.9% on average increase from 1 April next year, we still sit at a lower premium than those competitors, specifically on this Proactive and Proactive Plus plan. And so if you look at each of the plans in a similar way, you can do the same analysis. And so we've done that for the ProSecure and the ProSecure Plus. And if you start including those savvy options, it shows you exactly the same result. So you'll see again, our actual contributions sit on this range around 500 to 600 rand a month cheaper than those competitors in the same space. So even with our larger increase in 2022 and our effective increase of 6.68%, we are exceptionally competitive in terms of our positioning in the marketplace. On the Pro Pinnacle, we actually sit a slight bit higher, and that is the plan that's comprehensive. It looks after probably our sickest and elderly population, but they get access to the best benefits that you can find in the marketplace as well. So we revert then back to, well, what is the actual rand value increases? And you can see the same story come through. BestMed is one that has a very low rand increase this year, so they announced increases of under 5% for many of their plans this year. But again, when you compare the actual contribution rates, you'll find us on the bottom end. Proactive Plus, still on the lower end rand increase. So you're going to pay 110 to 200 rand more next year than you are paying currently this year. So the same for ProSecure and ProSecure Plus. On the lower end, there are many of the schemes on the top end, so the Discovery ones, and we don't know what the Discovery increases are, but the Discovery items or indicators are the ones that are above this plan as well. So still remaining very competitive in how we position. Pro Pinnacle one, always a bit more difficult because of the comprehensive benefits that we offer, but competitive. So even if you take it's a Discovery executive plan compared to our Pro Pinnacle plan, the difference in 2020, for instance, was 50 Rand a month. So it's not a lot of money when you do the comparisons. And that's the comparisons that we need you to be looking at. So in summary, what we're saying is we anticipating the 8.9% increase to come in only from 1 April next year, it effectively means that it's a 6.68% increase. And the different plans obviously unpack in terms of different overall increases and the rand values that are attached. I thank you for your time, and keep safe and keep healthy.
Thanks to Craig and Hendrik for some valuable insights. There's obviously a lot of detail within those presentations, and if you've just joined the stream or if you've been on and there was something that you were really interested in, you can visit profmed.coza and download any of the presentations that you've seen today to peruse the information. Send us any questions, comments, queries or concerns via social media or to visiting the website profmed.coza. Next up, it's part of the conversation that so many of you have been waiting for. This is where we really get to reward you. And this is all about top brokers. And that's what we're going to talk about today with Devesh Chiba. But before we go there, it's quite interesting that we've got a few polls running throughout the day. Keep sending your comments, your questions. And the latest poll, as I can see, is that if you were to offer a PPS wallet to your members, is it something that you would do or would you actively pursue? And there's about 73% of you saying that that's something that you're quite interested with. So Hendrik, it seems like the new add-ons are quite a fan. Anyway, so up next we've got Devesh Chiba. Let's meet our top brokers for 2021.
Hi, I'm Devesh Chiba, Profmed's Relationship Manager and the person responsible for our Top Broker Rewards and Recognition Program. I'm honored today to once again recognize our top 2020 Profmed brokers. These top performing brokers have been identified per region by the new business executives and are based on the new applications received during the 2020 period by the respective brokers. Congratulations and a big thank you goes to our national top winners. In first place, Davino Lazarus. In second place, Ruan Nell. And in third place, Lisa Hayden. As well as our top regional brokers, Aharon Perelman, Amarantia Lindeki, Takuzani Zondi. Thank you to every broker who continues to support Profmed. Your commitment and efforts are instrumental to our shared success.
Thanks, Devesh. We've been monitoring your questions and your engagement on our poll for the duration of the webinar. So up next, join us. Join Craig, myself, and Hendrik for the Q&A. Next up, I'm joined by Craig Comrie and Hendrik van den Berg. We've got a selection of questions that you've supplied us during the course of today. So we're going to jump straight into it, gents. It feels like we're in a game show now because you never really know what to expect. So I've got to make sure that I can keep you on your toes. So let's see what the first one is. I think this is a good one for Craig, actually. So Craig, what factors were taken into consideration when decisions were made with regards to how Profmed would fund COVID tests?
It is interesting. The COVID testing came through as initially a risk that our expenses would jump. In fact, we've always wanted people to have access to those COVID tests. They cost in the region of 850 Rand, and immediately we realized 60% of our members are in fact healthcare workers, doctors and specialists and others that are right at the front of the COVID pandemic. And so we've seen over time, I think we have a few members that have had more than 20 tests because of their work in an occupation. So we had to just look at how to limit it responsibly, make sure that people who are going for the COVID tests are ones that really need to have the tests taken. And so that has been our learning approach. So initially we were a little bit more tight-fisted in the way that we approached paying for those tests. We now are a little more open in terms of saying that everybody who has been referred to a test by a doctor will pay for that test. And so there is still some limitation on it. We've seen around 45,000 tests in the last year. So that does come at quite a significant price tag as well. And so we wanted to be responsible and balanced in terms of how we actually handled the funding of those tests.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer, but I think
Hendrik?
Hendrik always wants to add.
I couldn't have said it any better, Craig, thanks. But I just want to remind our folks that this was and is a novel virus, which means we had very little information to go on and to attempt to track and fund for risks that we did not know what they were. We went the prudent route, the responsible route. Let's see what comes in, monitor the information, and make decisions accordingly. And that's exactly what we did. And in hindsight, we believe that we made the correct decisions.
Yeah, you have to treat it on a case-by-case basis. I mean, it's not a binary solve, like you say. It's novel. So what do we actually do, and how do we approach that? Right. So let's jump to the next one. How has COVID claims or deaths, etc., affected the financial stability of
of our members? So when we look at it as a collective from a Profmed perspective, we've always been quite proud that we've managed to secure, or over the years, build up a reserve. And so our reserves have always been very healthy, and we can use some of those reserves to now spend on the additional COVID claims. I mean, you saw the 250 million rand that we've spent on the COVID claims experience. And so the scheme is healthy in terms of funding all the claims into the future. We really think we've approached it in a sustainable and a long-term view. We are concerned, and we've seen the pressure on the individual members. And that's why we went with a deferred contribution increase for next year, is to just create a little bit of breathing space for the impact of how COVID has impacted individual members, professions, the lawyers, the accountants, the practices have all shown lots of stress. In fact, we see a lot of members going to debt only to fund their medical scheme contributions, and we're fully aware of that.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it in your presentation that you do have this war chest of sorts, but in actual fact, those monies can be depleted very quickly if a 250 million rand set of claims comes in. So it's always about getting that balance and like Hendrik mentioned earlier, being prudent and being case-by-case orientated. How long do Profmed envisage COVID-related issues?
So we don't know going into the future what those variants may look like. We do realize there will be variants of COVID. And so typically, and we look at history, we see pandemics last for about anywhere between 2 and 5 years. Wow. We actually think the remnants of COVID will probably be with us for 7 years.
Oh, that's crazy. And I think it's like I said at the start of today's webinar, that here we were 12 months ago in exactly the same spot saying, you know, is this going to last for another few months? Where are we at? And I think exactly to your point, there's been a lot of that long COVID that's going to linger on for months or even years to come.
It is a part of the research that we rely on a lot of our specialists. So we listen to the impact of long COVID, so people who may have underlying health conditions and now have had COVID are suffering more so from diabetes and respiratory issues. We've always had space within our benefit structure to cover that. So we aren't concerned that there isn't a specific benefit for it. There is. We will cover those costs. We are concerned how long those type of conditions will last.
Hendrik, you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to say we are also getting smarter, I mean, in general, globally, about this pandemic. And obviously, from a funding perspective, it makes projecting, it makes our actuarial work slightly less cumbersome because, we still don't know exactly, but we have a good idea of what the behavioral claims patterns, etc., will be. So we're in a much better space, financially speaking, and being able to make decisions going forward now than what we were 12 months ago.
Yeah, and I think, you know, smartphones are supercomputers of our day. So to be able to solve actuarial models in their pocket, that's what a lot of those smart guys sitting in the top floor are working on around the clock, right?
Yeah. I think things like artificial intelligence is already being utilized within how we look at data and how we actually learn from the data and implement changes in our benefits going forward.
Fantastic. Oh, this is always a heated topical one. Will NHI still have
So we think within the environments, we see an election coming forward. There's going to be a lot of rhetoric about NHI. We think the policies will be formulated quite soon, but the long-term implementation is really subject to whether you have funding to drive NHI, and it's the funding that is a bit scarce. And so we need the economies to recover. We really need growth, real growth in the economy before NHI can be funded. But we want better healthcare for everybody in South Africa. That's a goal we have to reach, and we fully support that agenda.
What impact will NHI have on the future of healthcare funders?
So the one space we have disagreement with the NHI program and plan is the fact that NHI as itself is a funder. So it's a medical scheme, essentially. It actually collects either through taxes or other funds from individuals. It collects the money and it will pay the claims. Our view is that a single funder as an NHI doesn't work. In fact, if you look at all the rest of the world, there's not one national health system that works without the backup and the choices that a private sector funding like a medical scheme would provide. And so what we're advocating is that there's an essential part that medical schemes can play in terms of the NHI future, and that a single funder is not the way to go. So that's our clear position.
Just to add to that, 3 years ago, we had the question also from our partners, our broking fraternity, in terms of what will their role be if the funder's role is supplementary, if we were to accept a supplementary role. And our answer was, well, it's going to be just as difficult for our members, collective members, to understand how NHI fits into the bigger picture, what will be covered, what will not be covered, etc. And we believe that our partners, our brokers, will be able to fulfill that role better than any other party in the discussion. So I agree with Craig. NHI must happen. There are some challenges. I think most notably, exactly what Craig said, we as a nation can't afford it, not in the way that it's being presented in the bill, but it has to happen in some way or form, in conjunction with private sectors, what we are hoping for. And our brokers will play a very important part, a most definite role in making NHI work.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think the most important thing is that dialogue. And as soon as one thing is implemented without all of the buy-in from all of the stakeholders, you're not going to have a success. And I think that's basically the reality of where we're at with any of these proposed theorems and where they can possibly go.
So I'll lean on a bit of my accounting background, but we haven't seen proper budgets of what NHI will actually cost us. There are lots of estimations. We're talking about R500 billion budget for healthcare. And to eke that out from this very small and very contracted tax base is a huge challenge. It actually cannot happen in the context that we currently sit. We really have to focus on generating growth in the economy. And slowly that will allow an NHI base, which starts reasonably small, to then grow. So we fully support that we have to try and find better, and there's still a long way to go to more efficient healthcare, both in the private and the public sectors. And if we can get to that efficiency numbers first, then that budget starts to look more affordable into the future.
And how do we have an airline, nuclear, and NHI? I mean, I think that's a debate and a rabbit hole that we don't have time for today.
As long as they are efficient. I think that's the point. We actually want efficient businesses. And without them supporting the agenda, even in the healthcare space, we don't think you can find success through regulation.
Sure, that's a one. Oh, here we go. We're straight into a thesis now. Much being written about the brain.
So Craig and I had a discussion previously about this issue, and I think the private healthcare service providers are patriotic, and they want to stay, and they want to carry on doing their jobs and building lives for themselves. The issue here is accreditation. So it's written into the bill that if you practice, for example, in Krugersdorp, and according to the algorithms there is an oversupply, then you will not be accredited as a healthcare service provider to operate in Krugersdorp. There might be a shortage of your specific skill set elsewhere, maybe 50 or 100 kilometers from your home. And that is problematic. That will most certainly, with any shadow of a doubt, if someone is sitting there thinking, I really want to stay, but these things are really irritating me, that I believe will just push them closer to the edge.
Yeah, so that piece of legislation is out for comment at the moment. It's the certificate of need.
Yeah.
So it is supposed to spread the small resource of healthcare professionals we have more across the whole country. So the right agenda is there. I think implementation may restrict the freedom of where you want to practice or where you want to have a business. And that's what we need to find the right balance on.
Yeah. And that really creates challenge in a free market. Yeah. And I think those are the elements that are really under pressure. And I think you can't fault the policymakers for the theory and the strategy, like a lot of the times that's sound. But we've seen the thing that we struggle as from a policymaker perspective is actual execution, when the tacky hits the tie, Hendrik.
Exactly. And I mean, again, we have seen many failed projects across the globe based on socio, distribution in a seemingly so-called free market system. We know it doesn't work. We can debate the reasons why. And back to your point, we agree wholeheartedly with the principles at play here. It's always about how we go about executing it that we see some problems.
But in that execution, there are lots of opportunities. There's lots of opportunities to even reset some of the unaffordable private healthcare sector. The medical schemes, as you can see, ours and other schemes are battling with increases that outstrip salary and income inflation every single year. We need to find something that is scalable, that is tangible, both for the medical scheme member and those that aren't covered by things like medical scheme within an NHI environment. So it's looking at those opportunities and making sure we can get to an execution space that we can get this thing moving and improving it for everybody.
Some incredible food for thought. Thank you, gentlemen. So what is Profmed going to do going forward?
Looking at how we can take this to the marketplace. Look, affordability has been a part of the national narrative for a long time, and it will continue to be that. We also know that domestic household income to debt ratio in South Africa is dangerously high. So there's no interpretation here, there's no debate. So we are talking about at board level and with our actuaries and everybody involved with benefit design about being courageous, maybe slaughtering some holy cows, some of the beliefs that we harbored, going back, and they were right for that time, but we are definitely moving into a different time. So my answer is quite, and the maths is simple. You either get money from your members, which we all know, contribution increases. Craig spoke about that twice in his presentations, is that we are moving forward responsibly so that we do not present, hopefully, our members with double-digit increases, going forward. But in the same breath, we need to stay relevant and we need to be competitive. So the answer is quite simple. From a benefit design perspective, we are going to be taking a real hard look at across our membership base, across the options, with respect to what they're actually using. And there might be some things in the basket that cost money, but maybe the utilization is low, but the cost is high. We could possibly look at, not stripping it out, but tweaking the benefit, if you will. We will have to be more aggressive with our service providers in terms of, negotiations, because they are part and parcel of this discussion. They need to come to the table. For us to be able to continue funding and doing so on a sustainable level, that maths has to work. So there are a number of parts at play here, and we are acutely aware of every single one of them, and we will be moving forward as prudently and aggressively, if we can use those two words in the same sentence. I know Craig has some ideas as well. Yeah. But that's our thought, basically.
Just perhaps, the key is to, and what we've been focusing on the last few years, is getting to understand exactly what our members need. And if any member feels unheard, we really ask them to put it on the comment section, send emails to us. We really want to hear what they see as maybe not being covered currently that they're looking forward to and needing into the future. So it's about understanding the members who actually employ us. So we're there at the beck and call of what members need, and we need to just make sure that every benefit we put forward like the Tums to Tots program, like the PPS Wallet program. Both of those programs was because the members said, hey, here's a gap, here's something we need. Our members wanted medical savings account for, I think, the last 10 years. Yeah. PPS Wallet allows us to actually get into that space. So we are constantly evolving in terms of better catering for the needs of the members.
Well, you guys could definitely teach some public servants how to serve the public. And on that note, gentlemen, you've had a whole bunch of other questions. We've had a lot of stuff coming through that we unfortunately haven't been able to get through today. So if you have any questions, hit us up on social media, visit profmed.co.za, download any of the resources that you need from today. Like Craig said, we really are open to answering all of your questions. On the website, there is an email address that is dedicated specifically to Roadshow, so you can check that out and you can send us some correspondence. But thank you so much for joining us today. The stream is available publicly, so you'll be able to share it with any other brokers or any other members that you'd like to share it with in the meantime. And as the gent said, we welcome any other commentary, feedback, constructive criticism, you name it, because we can only be a better business based on your feedback and your insights. Thank you so much for joining us at Profmed Roadshow 2021. Have a fantastic time out there and be safe and have a great festive.
Today, we write the world of tomorrow. Leveraging 60 years of experience while spearheading the new. A delicate dance of wisdom and foresight, we are paving and pioneering the road that lies ahead. Sharing a vision, an entrepreneurial spirit, and solutionist way of life. Our purpose is defined in the professionals we serve, an intelligent partner when you need us most. Investing time to design, build, and create value. We meet at the intersection of innovation and science, creativity and analytics. Together, we are that collective of professionals who dream, who challenge the norms and achieve the extraordinary. So let's keep leading the way, expanding our journey, lighting the path, with the peace of mind that your well-being is covered by a professional just like you, who shares your values, your investment, and your commitment to deliver every day with tomorrow imagined. We are Profmed, intelligent medical aid for professionals.